when they closed their eyes and decided who they no longer wanted to be, and they decided who they did want to be, and they were crossing that river of change, when they were doing that inward work, they lost track of space and time. They just, when they opened their eyes, they thought it would be 15 minutes later, and it was an hour and 15 minutes later, and they were like, I don't know what happened. And so then I started looking into research on what part of the brain really can make thought more real than anything else, and it's the frontal lobe. And I've read every researcher and every single research paper, every book on the frontal lobe, anybody that was a really great scientist. And frontal lobe is like a volume control. It's the creative center. It's when you have an idea, speculation, invention. When you're looking at possibility, it switches on, and it's the CEO, it's a symphony leader. And it's going to look out over the landscape of the entire brain and call up different circuits of knowledge and experience that you have and seamlessly piece them together.
Wow.
And when it does it and the nerve cells start firing in tandem, your brain creates a holographic image, a picture, and you're selecting a new possibility. And you're like, I can do that. That's possible. You're selecting a new possibility, right? That's the creative center. It's an unknown. And for the passionate person, that thought in their mind literally becomes the experience, and the end product of the experience is the emotion. So the person who's seeing that future and all of a sudden feels the empowerment, the success, the abundance, the gratitude from the healing, it's that thought and that feeling, it's that image and that emotion, it's that stimulus and that response that's conditioning the body to emotionally be in the future. Now think about this. If you're feeling the feelings of your future as if it's already happened, if your body is feeling the emotion of your future like it's already happened, you won't be looking for it. You only look for it when you feel like it hasn't happened. When it's already happened, you're no longer looking for it, which means you're no longer separate. And that's when people started having really powerful changes. So I started studying the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe's like a volume control. And when it switches on and you assign meaning to an act, if I said, Lewis, if you did this, like whatever it is, if you did this, and I can tell you all the reasons, all the benefits, and I can give you the what and the why. And you go, I got it. And I showed you how. The moment you got the how, if you understood the what and the why, you would assign meaning to the task, and the frontal lobe switches on, and it wants the intentional outcome. It doesn't want a half an outcome, it wants the outcome, and it's going to keep doing it until it shortens the distance between the thought and the experience, right? So somehow, this frontal lobe would switch on and lower the volume, the circuits in the brain that cause you to process your body, to feel your body, to be aware of anything in your environment and what your environment made of, objects and people and bodies and things and places, and not be thinking about the future or the past. You're so locked in the present moment that space and time somehow change. And their inner world becomes more real than their outer world. And it was fascinating because when they came back on some level, they felt differently. So anyway, so I wrote a book about it. Called Evolve Your Brain, The Science of Changing Your Mind, in a very heady, very academic. And I think when you write your first book, you write to your biggest critics, right? And then there were some documentaries that came out, and people were starting to ask really important questions. Like the theory and the philosophy was really good, but people started saying to me, okay, if your thoughts have something to do with your future or your life, how do you do it? Like, how do you do it? And then the second question was, if my personality creates my personal reality and I got to change my personality to change my personal reality, why is it so hard to change? I mean, if most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, it doesn't work. So now how do I change so my life changes? And I thought, what a great question. And I saw that it wasn't as easy to change as we think, right? You could say on Monday morning, you're going to stop cursing and stop complaining.
Good luck.
And then by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're unconscious. You can default it back to the old self, right? And that's that. How many times do I have to forget and go unconscious till I stop forgetting and start remembering? I mean, if you want to be happy, really happy in your life, you got to stop complaining, because complaining doesn't make you feel happy. If you want to be happy, you can't judge another person, because the judgment is not going to make you feel happy. So you got to, that anything that's not loving you must die. You know, I mean, or a part of us must die that's not love, right? And I
or
think
it was transformed in some way.
in some way. But
Right.
there is some death that goes on.
letting go,
Yeah.
a death, a surrender.
And an addiction, you break the addiction, right? So
Gosh.
anyway, so these documentaries came out. We're doing seminars around the world, and I was on panels, and I was listening to these questions. And this was, early 2000s, and I realized that there weren't a lot of people teaching how to do it, right? So I thought, okay, I'm going to start running these.
People were talking about it theoretically.
Right. It was all, that's how it was at that time. And I thought, well, I'm just going to start teaching these events. I'll take everything that I've learned from the spontaneous remissions, everything that I've researched on neuroplasticity. I went back to school, studied neuroscience. I did brain imaging classes. I got really into it. And I thought, God, I'll teach these classes, on a Friday night, an all-day Saturday workshop. I'll teach about brain waves. I'll teach about placebo. I'll teach about, emotions and survival and stress, and, give them people information. And then I'll give them something to do. And I think people came for the first couple of years, and they felt better at the end of a one-day workshop, but I didn't see any really big changes.
Right.
I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm done. Maybe it doesn't work. But everybody kept saying, can you teach another one? So then I would do another one, and then another one, and then I kept level 2, level 3, level 4, I just kept going, and then I got to a point where I didn't know anything else. And then I had a mystical experience one morning right before the first day of this event that changed me, completely changed me.
What year is this? Roughly?
2011 or 2010. And I was like, oh my God, there's way more to reality than I thought. Like, there's way more. And so somewhere in the mix around this time, I started seeing people stepping out of wheelchairs with MS. Not once, not twice. I saw people with Parkinson's disease, with a lot of facial paralysis and tremors in a weekend workshop. Like, say, I don't have any tremors. I'm out of my wheelchair, and they're dancing around, and I think I was more surprised than anybody. Like, I was really super surprised what was taking place. I was witnessing something happening right before my eyes, and I kept saying, something's got to be, there must be an inner event that's going on there, that inside that person that is so real, so transcendental, that it's changing their biology, and they're upregulating genes for health, and they're downregulating genes for disease, and something's going on in their brain, something's going on in their body. And so that's when I changed everything. That's when I said, okay, we're going to stop doing these weekend events, and we're going to do a 4-day event, one evening and 4 full days, and we're going to do scientific measurements. We're going to measure brains before the event and brains after the event. And I wanted to see that the changes weren't just in their mind. I wanted to know that they were in their brains. So I brought a team of neuroscientists together. We did a lot of quantitative EEGs. And then I did something really interesting, and we started measuring brains in real time. So I could see their brains while the meditation was going on. And then if it requires a clear intention, that's a function of a coherent brain, and an elevated emotion, which is a function of the heart, okay? Let's see if we can change the brain and heart in really specific ways. So in the beginning, we partnered with Heart Math Institute, and we did a lot of analysis on HRV, and we wanted people to be able to sustain heart coherence, not just for 5 minutes, but for 45 minutes. I wanted it to become a skill.
What is heart coherence for people that don't know?
Okay, so I'll tell you what heart incoherence is first, and then I'll tell you what heart coherence is. So if you're living in stress and you're living in survival, and there's a physiological change in your body when you perceive a threat or a danger in your outer world, or you have the perception that something's going to get worse, and that automatic or autonomic system switches on, and there's an arousal that takes place, and there's a rush of adrenaline, and your heart rate starts to increase, and your respiratory rate starts to increase, and blood is sent to the extremities and away from the internal organs, and glucose is being mobilized, and you're getting a lot of energy to run, fight, or hide. But let's just say that you're on a Zoom call, and you're reacting to a coworker in the same way you would fight off a predator. And your heart is beating, but you're not exerting yourself, so the heart starts beating against a closed system. It's like pumping against restricted system.
Your body's not moving.
Right. And so you're not using that energy.
You're not transforming the
Right.
energy.
You're sitting there, you're stepping on the gas and the brake at the same time.
Ooh.
And the heart's beating against the closed system, and it starts beating very out of order, very erratically, and it starts losing its variability in terms of its beat. And when the heart gets incoherent, if you study any type of waves, when waves are incoherent and they interfere with each other, they cancel each other out. And when waves cancel each other out, energy drops. So energy leaves the heart when you're resentful, when you're impatient, when you're judgmental, when you're frustrated. No doubt about it, your heart's beating differently than when you're grateful, when you're appreciative, when you're kind, when you're caring, when you're loving, when you're inspired. The heart is moving out of survival, and we discovered that the heart is the creative center. And when energy moves into the heart, and you're breathing and you're converting your body out of that fight or flight nervous system, that sympathetic system, if you can convert it into the parasympathetic system, that nervous system of relaxation, the heart can come out. It's no longer living in survival or stress, and energy naturally moves into the heart, and the heart starts beating in this beautiful rhythm, like beating a drum or dropping a pebble after pebble after pebble in the water. And the heart starts to emit an external field, a magnetic field. But what we discovered that was even more exciting was that once energy drops into the heart, the heart, the creative center, resets the baseline for the emotional trauma in the past and tells the brain that the past is over. And that's the moment it sends a very strong signal to the brain, and the brain moves into a very creative state.